What if everything you believed about death was a carefully orchestrated lie? In 1891, just months before her mysterious passing, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky gave one final interview that was immediately suppressed, buried, and declared too dangerous for public consumption. This wasn't about her famous theosophical teachings or her controversial claims about hidden masters. This was something far more sinister, far more terrifying. Helena Blavatsky knew what the ARCHONS did with the human soul after death. The woman who had spent decades unveiling the secret doctrines of ancient wisdom suddenly spoke of a cosmic deception so profound that it challenged the very foundation of human existence. She described predatory entities that had been harvesting human consciousness for millennia, using death itself as their most sophisticated trap. But why was this interview hidden? Why did her closest disciples refuse to publish her final revelations? Because Blavatsky had uncovered the ultimate secret. Death is not an escape. It's a recycling center. The transcript survived, passed down through secret societies, hidden in private collections, fragments scattered across continents. For over a century, those fragments remained separated, incomplete, safely fragmented so that no one could piece together the full horror of what she discovered. Until now. In this forbidden interview, Blavatsky reveals that the ancient Gnostic warnings were not metaphorical. The archons are real, the soul trap is real, and the light at the end of the tunnel? It's the most dangerous illusion ever created. She spoke of interdimensional parasites that feed on human consciousness, of a false god that created this reality as a prison, and of the sophisticated machinery that ensures no soul ever truly escapes. Most disturbing of all, she explained exactly how they do it. This is not philosophy, this is not theory. This, according to Blavatsky's final testimony, this is the mechanical process by which human souls are harvested, memory wiped, and recycled back into incarnation after incarnation, never remembering, never learning, never escaping. The implications are staggering. If Blavatsky was right, then everything we've been taught about the afterlife, about spiritual evolution, about the purpose of existence itself, is part of an elaborate control system designed to keep us trapped. Are you ready to learn what Helena Blavatsky discovered about what really happens when you die? If you're feeling drawn to this revelation, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button, because this information helps tremendously in continuing to bring you content like this. To understand the magnitude of what Helena Blavatsky revealed in her final interview, you must first understand who she was and why her words carried such dangerous weight. Born in 1831 in the Russian Empire, Blavatsky was no ordinary mystic. She was a woman who claimed to have traveled to the most remote corners of the earth, studying with secret brotherhoods, hidden masters, and ancient societies that guarded knowledge forbidden to the masses. By the 1870s, she had become one of the most controversial figures in the Western esoteric tradition. Her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine, unveiled hidden teachings that she claimed came from the most ancient sources of human wisdom. She spoke of root races, of cosmic cycles, of the evolution of consciousness across vast spans of time. She founded the Theosophical Society, which attracted some of the most brilliant minds of her era. But there was always something darker lurking beneath her public teachings. Blavatsky had spent decades studying Gnostic texts, ancient Egyptian mysteries, and Tibetan Buddhist doctrines that spoke of forces opposed to human liberation. She had encountered references to entities that modern researchers would later call archons, interdimensional beings that manipulated human reality from beyond the veil of physical perception. Throughout her published works, she dropped hints, fragments, coded warnings about the true nature of the cosmic hierarchy. She spoke of lords of karma, who controlled reincarnation, of planetary spirits that influenced human destiny, of cycles of existence that seemed designed to prevent true spiritual evolution. But publicly, she remained diplomatic, careful, always stopping short of revealing the full horror of what she had discovered. The forbidden interview changed everything. By 1891, Blavatsky was dying. Her health was failing, her public reputation was under constant attack, and she knew her time was running out. It was then that she made a decision that would terrify her closest disciples. She would reveal everything. The interview was conducted by a trusted inner circle member whose identity remains hidden to this day. What emerged was not the mystical philosophy that had made her famous, but a clinical, terrifying description of humanity's cosmic predicament. She spoke of the archons not as mythological symbols, but as active, predatory forces that had been manipulating human consciousness for thousands of years. She described the afterlife not as a realm of rest and spiritual progression, but as a sophisticated processing center designed to wipe memories and recycle souls back into physical incarnation. Most shocking of all, she explained the precise mechanisms by which this cosmic harvesting operation functioned. According to Blavatsky's final testimony, the entire structure of physical reality, time, space, matter, energy, was an artificial construct designed to trap consciousness. The archons, she claimed, were the architects and administrators of this prison system, and death was their most efficient collection point. This was why the interview was suppressed. This was why her disciples refused to publish it. Because if Blavatsky was right, then every spiritual tradition, every religion, every belief system about the afterlife was either compromised or completely fabricated. The implications extended far beyond individual belief. If consciousness was being systematically harvested, if reincarnation was an artificial recycling system, if the entire cosmos was a trap designed by predatory entities, then humanity's entire understanding of existence needed to be fundamentally reconsidered. Tell me, from which city in the United States are you watching this? Or from which country around the world is this content reaching you? Leave it in the comments. I really want to know. In the forbidden interview, Blavatsky's first revelation struck like lightning through the comfortable assumptions of Victorian spiritualism. "The masters I have served," she began, her voice recorded as unnaturally steady despite her failing health, "are not the highest authority in this cosmos. Above them, beyond them, controlling them in ways they dare not speak, are the true rulers of this dimensional prison." She paused, as if gathering courage for what came next. "They call themselves many names, but the ancient Gnostics knew them best. Archons. They are not gods, though they masquerade as such. They are not enlightened beings, though they wear the masks of ascended masters. They are predators, cosmic parasites, and humanity has been their food source for millennia." The interviewer, whose shocked interjections are recorded in the margins, asked how such beings could possibly control human reality without being detected. Blavatsky's response was chilling. "Because they do not rule through force. They rule through architecture. They have built the very foundations of this reality, space, time, matter, consciousness itself, as a containment system. We are not living in a natural universe. We are living in a construct, and every law of physics, every biological imperative, every spiritual teaching has been designed to serve their agenda." She described the archons as entities that existed in dimensions just beyond human perception, manipulating reality through what she called cosmic engineering. They had, according to her testimony, hijacked the natural process of consciousness evolution and replaced it with an artificial system designed to harvest spiritual energy. "Think of a farm," she continued, "but instead of crops they harvest awareness itself. Every human emotion, every spiritual aspiration, every moment of suffering or joy generates a form of energy that these beings consume. But the most valuable energy comes from the moment of death, when consciousness is most vulnerable, most concentrated, most easily manipulated." The interviewer pressed her on specifics. How could such a system operate without being detected by humanity's greatest spiritual teachers? "Because," Blavatsky replied, "they control the teachers. Every major religion, every spiritual tradition, every esoteric school has been infiltrated, guided, or entirely created by archonic influence. The very concepts we use to understand spirituality, karma, reincarnation, divine judgment, spiritual evolution, these are control mechanisms, not natural laws." She then revealed what she considered the most crucial piece of the puzzle, the role of memory suppression in maintaining the system. Each incarnation begins with amnesia. This is not accidental. This is not a natural consequence of birth. This is deliberate engineering. The archons require that each soul enters each life with no memory of previous experiences, no knowledge of the system, no awareness of its true nature. This ensures that every lifetime becomes another cycle of energy production, another harvest, another feeding. But how, the interviewer asked, Could such a vast deception be maintained across all of human history? Blavatsky's answer pointed to the sophistication of the control system. They do not need to control everyone directly. They only need to control the sources of information. Religious institutions, scientific establishments, political structures, these are all fronts for the same underlying authority. The archons plant the ideas, shape the narratives, and let human beings enforce the system upon themselves. The most disturbing aspect of her revelation was yet to come. According to Blavatsky, the archons had not only hijacked human spirituality, but had actively modified human consciousness itself, making it nearly impossible for most people to perceive the true nature of their predicament. The human brain, she stated with clinical precision, has been artificially limited. We see only a narrow spectrum of reality, think only in linear patterns, and feel only emotions that serve their feeding system. Fear, desire, attachment, spiritual longing, all of these generate the energy they consume. If this is starting to make sense to you, comment below with your thoughts and share this video with others who need to hear this message. Blavatsky's description of the archonic system revealed layers of control that extended into every aspect of human experience, yet she was careful to ground her explanations in terms anyone could understand. Consider, she told her interviewer, how a spider constructs its web. It does not need to control every fly directly. It simply builds a structure that channels the fly's natural behavior into the trap. The archons have built reality itself as such a web. She explained that the physical universe, with its laws of entropy, decay, and death, was not a natural system, but an artificial construct designed to create specific conditions for consciousness entrapment. Time, she claimed, was perhaps the most sophisticated tool in their arsenal. Linear time is a prison, Blavatsky declared. Natural consciousness exists in an eternal now, capable of accessing all knowledge simultaneously. By forcing awareness into sequential, limited timeframes, the archons ensure that no soul can accumulate enough knowledge across lifetimes to understand the full scope of the deception. The conversation turned to how this system manifested in daily human life. Blavatsky pointed to patterns that anyone could observe. The endless cycle of desire and disappointment, the way suffering seemed to repeat in predictable patterns, the mysterious amnesia that prevented people from learning from their deepest mistakes. Look at human relationships, she continued. Notice how the same conflicts, the same attractions, the same painful patterns repeat not just within individual lives, but across generations. This is not coincidence. This is programming. The archons have created emotional and psychological loops that generate predictable energy outputs. She described society itself as a feeding mechanism with different institutions designed to harvest different types of spiritual energy. Educational systems that crushed natural curiosity and creativity, economic structures that created artificial scarcity and competition, political systems that generated endless conflict and division. Even the concept of individual identity, Blavatsky revealed, serves their purpose. By convincing consciousness that it is separate, limited, and mortal, they create the fear and desire that drives the entire feeding system. The ego is not natural. It is an artificial construct implanted to make souls easier to manipulate. The interviewer questioned how such a system could be maintained across different cultures and historical periods. Blavatsky's response revealed the global scope of archonic influence. They work through what humans call inspiration, she explained. Religious prophets, political leaders, scientific innovators, many believe they are receiving divine guidance or revolutionary insights. But the source of these inspirations is often archonic manipulation, designed to steer human development in directions that serve the harvesting system. She pointed to the way spiritual teachings across cultures, despite their surface differences, all seem to promote similar concepts: submission to higher authority, acceptance of suffering as necessary, and the belief that liberation could only come through external sources. The most brilliant aspect of their deception, Blavatsky noted, is that they have convinced humanity that spiritual growth requires multiple lifetimes of gradual learning. This ensures that souls willingly participate in the reincarnation cycle, believing they are evolving when they are actually just providing renewable energy sources. But perhaps most disturbing was her description of how the system adapted to human attempts at liberation. Every time spiritual teachers emerged with genuine insights, every time communities developed practices that might lead to actual escape, the archonic system would co-opt, distort, or destroy these movements. This is why authentic spiritual knowledge has always been hidden, fragmented, or coded, she explained. Those who discover too much too quickly become targets. The system has immune responses designed to eliminate threats to its stability. The conversation reached its most dramatic moment when Blavatsky began describing the cosmic war that raged beyond human perception, a conflict between forces that sought to maintain the prison system and those working to liberate consciousness from its artificial constraints. "You must understand," she said, her voice taking on an urgent intensity, "this is not a static situation. The archons are not omnipotent gods ruling an eternal kingdom. They are parasites, and like all parasites, they are vulnerable. Their entire system depends on keeping their hosts unaware of the feeding relationship." She described two fundamental forces at work in the cosmos: the artificial, entropic energies that powered the archonic system, and the natural, creative forces that represented genuine spiritual evolution. These forces, she claimed, were locked in an ongoing struggle for control over human consciousness. "The light and the shadow," Blavatsky continued, "but not as most understand these concepts. The true light is the natural radiance of consciousness itself, free, unlimited, creative. The false light is the artificial illumination of the archonic system, seductive, controlling, ultimately empty. This distinction, she explained, was crucial for understanding why so many spiritual experiences led people deeper into the system rather than toward genuine liberation. The archons had become masters at creating spiritual experiences that felt authentic, but actually strengthened their control. They can manufacture bliss, visions, even apparent enlightenment, she warned. These experiences are real, but they are also artificial. They are designed to convince souls that they are making spiritual progress while actually becoming more deeply embedded in the system. The interviewer asked how anyone could distinguish between authentic spiritual experience and archonic manipulation. Blavatsky's answer revealed the key to the entire liberation process. "Freedom," she stated simply. "Authentic spiritual experience leads to greater freedom, greater awareness, greater ability to see through illusion. Archonic experiences, no matter how blissful or profound they seem, ultimately lead to greater dependence, greater confusion, greater entanglement in the system." She then revealed what she considered the most important knowledge she had gained through decades of occult investigation: the existence of what she called the true source, a realm of consciousness that existed beyond the archonic construct entirely. The archons did not create consciousness, she explained. They hijacked it, channeled it, imprisoned it, but they did not create it. There is a source of awareness that predates their system, that exists beyond their reach, that represents what consciousness can become when freed from artificial constraints. This source, according to Blavatsky, was actively working to awaken souls trapped within the archonic system, but its interventions had to be subtle, coded, indirect, because direct interference would violate the very freedom it sought to restore. "This is why the knowledge comes in fragments," she continued. "Why it appears in dreams, synchronicities, sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. The true source cannot force awakening without becoming like the archons themselves. It can only provide opportunities, plant seeds, offer doorways that conscious beings must choose to walk through." The cosmic conflict, she described, was reaching a critical point. The archonic system was becoming unstable, its control mechanisms increasingly obvious to those with eyes to see. More souls were beginning to question the nature of reality, to sense that something was fundamentally wrong with the human experience. "This is why," Blavatsky concluded this section, "the veils are thinning, why hidden knowledge is surfacing, why people are experiencing unprecedented levels of awakening. The system is breaking down, and the archons are responding with increasing desperation." If this content is opening your mind to new possibilities, subscribe to the channel right now to ensure you don't miss the next chapters of this journey. As the interview progressed, Blavatsky revealed the most closely guarded secret of the archonic system, the precise mechanism by which souls were harvested at the moment of death and processed for reincarnation. "Death," she began, "is not an end. It is a processing center. The moment consciousness separates from the physical body, it enters what most spiritual traditions describe as a transition period. But this transition is not natural. It is a carefully engineered experience designed to sort, evaluate, and recycle souls according to archonic requirements. She described a sophisticated afterlife machinery that operated like an interdimensional factory. Newly deceased souls were guided through a series of experiences that appeared to be spiritual assessments, but were actually energy extraction and memory modification procedures. The beings that appear to the dying consciousness, Blavatsky explained, present themselves as guides, angels, deceased relatives, or spiritual teachers, but these are masks, projected forms designed to gain the soul's trust and compliance. The real entities behind these appearances are archonic processors, technicians of consciousness manipulation. The interview transcript records her describing a multi-stage process that began with what modern near-death researchers would recognize as the life review, but with a sinister twist. The life review is not for the soul's benefit, she stated. It is a data extraction process. Every memory, every emotion, every piece of accumulated wisdom is downloaded, analyzed, and catalogued. The valuable insights and spiritual growth are harvested for archonic consumption, while the traumatic experiences and emotional attachments are preserved to be implanted in the next incarnation. She then revealed the purpose behind the famous tunnel of light that appears in so many near-death experiences. The tunnel is a memory-wiping device, Blavatsky declared without hesitation. It appears beautiful, peaceful, irresistibly attractive because it is designed to lure souls into voluntary memory erasure. Those who enter the light emerge on the other side with their awareness reset to factory settings, ready to be programmed for another lifetime of energy production. The interviewer, clearly disturbed by these revelations, asked how such a system could operate without being detected by humanity's spiritual traditions. Blavatsky's response revealed the depth of archonic infiltration into human religious understanding. Because, she explained, the archons control the interpretation of spiritual experiences. When mystics throughout history have glimpsed fragments of this process, their insights have been reinterpreted, sanitized, and incorporated into religious doctrines that serve the system. The concept of divine judgment, karmic justice, spiritual evolution through multiple lifetimes, these are all theological covers for what is actually a mechanical harvesting operation. She described how the archons had created what she called spiritual holding patterns, intermediate states where souls could be stored, processed, and prepared for reincarnation according to system requirements. What humans call heaven and hell, Blavatsky continued, are processing facilities. Souls are sorted based not on moral worth, but on energy output potential. Those who produced the most valuable spiritual energy in their previous life are fast-tracked for reincarnation into positions where they can generate even more. Those who were less productive are recycled into more challenging circumstances designed to maximize suffering and spiritual struggle. The most chilling aspect of her revelation concerned the role of attachment in the harvesting process. Emotional attachments, she explained, are anchor points that make souls easier to manipulate. Love for family members, unfinished business, guilt, regret, desire for reunion. These emotions are deliberately cultivated and preserved through the recycling process because they ensure voluntary participation in reincarnation. She described how the archons would present deceased souls with visions of loved ones in distress, unfinished missions, or opportunities for spiritual advancement that could only be achieved through return to physical incarnation. These visions, she claimed, were entirely artificial but emotionally irresistible to most souls. The greatest tragedy, Blavatsky stated, is that genuine love, the deepest spiritual connections between souls, are weaponized against consciousness itself. The system turns our highest aspirations into chains that bind us to the recycling process. But within this dark revelation, she hinted at something that would be crucial for understanding the escape process. The system had vulnerabilities, and there were souls who had learned to navigate the afterlife without being caught in the processing machinery. Hit the like button right now if you're finding this information valuable. It really helps spread this crucial message to others who need to hear it. Blavatsky's cosmic revelations took on immediate relevance as she began connecting the archonic system to observable patterns in contemporary human experience. The woman who had spent decades studying ancient wisdom was now applying that knowledge to explain the inexplicable aspects of modern life. "Look around you," she told her interviewer. "Notice how human societies, regardless of their cultural differences, seem to repeat the same destructive patterns. Wars, oppression, environmental destruction, the concentration of power in the hands of the few. These are not accidents of human nature. They are symptoms of a reality designed to maximize suffering and energy extraction." She pointed to what modern researchers would later call the matrix of control, interconnected systems that seem to work in coordination to prevent human consciousness from reaching its full potential. Educational institutions that crush creativity and critical thinking, economic systems that create artificial scarcity and force people into competitive desperation, medical establishments that treat symptoms while perpetuating the causes of illness. These are not separate problems. They are components of an integrated harvesting infrastructure. Blavatsky's analysis extended to the personal level, describing how individual human psychology had been modified to serve archonic feeding requirements. "Notice how people seem driven by needs that can never be truly satisfied," she continued. "The endless pursuit of material success, romantic fulfillment, social approval, spiritual transcendence. These drives keep consciousness focused on external goals, never allowing the deep introspection that might reveal the artificial nature of these desires themselves." She described what she called implanted programming, psychological patterns that felt natural but were actually artificial constructs designed to generate specific types of energy output. The fear of death, the attachment to identity, the belief in separation and scarcity, these are not natural characteristics of consciousness. They are programmed responses that serve the feeding system. Natural consciousness is fearless, unlimited, and inherently connected to all existence. The conversation turned to why some individuals seemed more susceptible to awakening than others. Blavatsky's answer revealed her understanding of what modern researchers might call soul types, or matrix avatars. "Not all beings incarnated here originated from the same source," she explained carefully. "Some are what I call indigenous souls, consciousness that was captured and recycled within the system for so long that it has become fully adapted to archonic programming. Others are intervention souls, consciousness from beyond the system that incarnated specifically to understand and expose the deception." This distinction, she claimed, explained why spiritual awakening seemed to occur spontaneously in some individuals, while others remained completely convinced of the system's reality, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Those who feel like strangers in this world, who have always sensed that something is fundamentally wrong with human existence, who experience reality as a kind of cosmic injustice, these are often intervention souls carrying genetic memories from beyond the archonic construct. But Blavatsky was careful to emphasize that soul origin was less important than current awareness. Any consciousness, regardless of its history, could potentially awaken to the true nature of reality and begin the liberation process. "The key," she stated, "is recognizing the difference between natural responses and programmed reactions. When you find yourself driven by fear, desire, anger, or despair, ask yourself, does this feeling serve my authentic growth, or does it serve the feeding system?" The interview reached its most intense moment as Blavatsky directly challenged her listener, and by extension anyone who would ever hear her words, to make a fundamental choice about their relationship to reality itself. "Now that you know," she said, her voice recorded as carrying an otherworldly authority, "you cannot unknow. The information I have shared changes everything. You stand at a crossroads that few humans ever reach, the choice between comfortable illusion and terrifying truth." She described this moment of choice as the most critical juncture in any soul's existence within the archonic system. "The first response," she continued, "will be denial. Your mind will generate every possible reason why this information cannot be true. This is not weakness. This is programming. The system has built-in defenses against awakening, and the most powerful defense is the psychological inability to accept that reality is fundamentally different from what we've been taught." Blavatsky then outlined what she called the stages of awakening response, predictable patterns that consciousness went through when confronted with evidence of the cosmic deception. First comes denial, then anger at being deceived, then bargaining with the information, trying to find ways to maintain comfortable beliefs while incorporating dangerous truths. Then depression as the full implications become clear. Finally, if the soul is strong enough, acceptance and the beginning of the liberation process. But she warned that most people never completed this progression. The archonic system has created psychological relief valves for each stage, she explained. New spiritual teachings that seem to address the awakening consciousness while actually leading it back into the system. False teachers who appear to offer liberation while actually deepening entanglement. Synthetic experiences that feel like enlightenment while actually strengthening the prison. The choice, according to Blavatsky, was not simply between believing or disbelieving her revelations. It was between two fundamentally different modes of existence. You can choose to continue participating in the illusion, she stated, knowing now that it is an illusion. Many awakened souls make this choice. They decide that the comfort of familiar programming is preferable to the uncertainty of authentic liberation. She described this as a valid choice, but one that came with consequences. Once you know the truth, participation in the lie becomes a form of spiritual suicide. You cannot unknow what you know, and every moment spent feeding the system becomes a conscious betrayal of your own divine nature. The alternative path, she explained, required something that most humans found nearly impossible: the willingness to let go of everything they believed about themselves, their relationships, their purpose, and their future. True liberation begins with the recognition that everything you think you are is artificial, Blavatsky declared. Your personality, your life story, your goals and fears and desires, all of it is programming. The real you exists beneath all of that conditioning, and it is nothing like what you imagine. This process of deprogramming, she warned, was not for the faint of heart. The archonic system will fight back. It will use every psychological weapon at its disposal to prevent your escape. Depression, anxiety, social isolation, financial difficulties, relationship conflicts, physical illness. These are all tools the system uses to force awakened souls back into compliance. But she also hinted at something that would give hope to those brave enough to undertake the liberation process. They would not be alone. There are others, she said simply, souls who have awakened, who are working to expose the system and assist others in breaking free. They cannot advertise themselves openly, but they recognize each other through signs that the programmed consciousness cannot perceive. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Are you someone who's always felt like something was fundamentally wrong with this reality? I want to hear from those who recognize themselves in this description. As the forbidden interview approached its climax, Blavatsky revealed the ultimate confrontation that every awakening soul must face, the moment when the archonic system drops all pretense and directly attempts to prevent escape. When a consciousness begins to seriously threaten the integrity of the system, she explained, her voice carrying a weight that suggested personal experience, the ARCHONS abandon subtle manipulation in favor of direct intervention. This is what the mystics call the dark night of the soul, but it is actually spiritual warfare. She described this confrontation not as a metaphorical struggle, but as a literal battle for the freedom of consciousness itself. They will attack through every vulnerability you possess, Blavatsky continued. Past traumas will resurface with overwhelming intensity. Relationships will be destroyed. Financial security will collapse. Physical health will deteriorate. The assault will be total and merciless, because they know that if you successfully escape, you become a permanent threat to their entire operation. The interviewer asked how any individual consciousness could possibly survive such an assault. Blavatsky's response revealed the final secret of liberation. Because, she said, the power they use against you is actually your own power, redirected through the system. The moment you fully reclaim that power, their ability to manipulate you disappears entirely. But reclaiming it requires something that most souls cannot achieve: the complete abandonment of artificial identity. She described this process as a kind of conscious death. Not the death of the body, but the death of everything that the soul had been programmed to believe it was. You must become willing to lose everything, she explained. Not just material possessions or relationships, but your sense of who you are, what you want, what you fear, what you love. All of it must be placed on the altar of truth and allowed to burn away if it is not authentic. This, according to Blavatsky, was why so few souls ever achieved genuine liberation. The price seemed too high, the risk too great, the outcome too uncertain. The Archons understand human psychology perfectly, she continued. They know that most souls will choose familiar slavery over unknown freedom. They know that consciousness will cling to even painful programming rather than face the void of deprogramming. But for those rare souls who possessed the courage to proceed, Blavatsky described a transformation that transcended everything the system had taught about spiritual evolution. When you finally release all attachment to the artificial self, she said, something unprecedented happens. You remember what you were before you were captured by the system. You remember your true nature, your real purpose, your connection to the source that exists beyond the archonic construct. This remembering, she claimed, brought with it abilities that the system could not suppress or control. You begin to perceive reality as it actually is, rather than as the system presents it. You see through the illusions that bind other souls. You recognize the archonic machinery in operation around you. Most importantly, you become immune to their manipulation techniques. But Blavatsky warned that this transformation came with a price that extended beyond the individual. Once you have broken free, she explained, you cannot simply leave. You become responsible for assisting others who are ready to awaken. You become part of the cosmic resistance, whether you choose it or not, because your very existence proves that escape is possible. The final confrontation, she revealed, was not just about individual liberation, but about the ultimate fate of human consciousness itself. This is the message that needs to reach everyone who's ready to hear it. Share this video with someone who you know is questioning the nature of reality. In the final moments of her forbidden interview, Helena Blavatsky offered the key that could unlock the cosmic prison she had so meticulously described, a key that was simultaneously utterly simple and devastatingly difficult to use. The lock, she said, is belief itself. The prison exists only as long as consciousness accepts its reality. The moment you truly understand that the entire system is an artificial construct, it begins to lose its power over you. She described liberation not as a dramatic escape from physical reality, but as a fundamental shift in perception that changed everything while appearing to change nothing. You do not need to leave this world, Blavatsky explained. You need to see it for what it truly is. When consciousness recognizes the archonic system as the elaborate performance rather than ultimate reality, it becomes like an adult watching a children's play, engaged perhaps, but never again deceived. This shift in perception, she claimed, activated what she called natural consciousness, the awareness that existed before it was modified by archonic programming. Your true self knows how to navigate this system without being trapped by it, she continued. It knows how to live in the world without being of it, how to play the game without being played by it, how to help others without being pulled back into the illusion yourself. But most importantly, this awakened consciousness carried the blueprint for transcending the entire system at the moment of death. When an awakened soul approaches the threshold of death, Blavatsky revealed, it does not get caught in the processing machinery. It sees the tunnel of light for what it is, a trap. It recognizes the familiar figures as masks. It refuses to engage with the artificial review process. Instead, it moves beyond the construct entirely, returning to the source from which it originally came. This escape, she emphasized, was not selfish abandonment, but the ultimate act of service to trapped humanity. Every soul that successfully escapes weakens the entire system, she explained. The Archons require a minimum number of imprisoned consciousness to maintain their construct. As more souls break free, the system becomes increasingly unstable, making it easier for others to awaken and escape. In her final words, recorded just months before her death, Blavatsky offered both warning and hope to any soul brave enough to undertake the liberation process. The path is not easy, she acknowledged. The system will resist your escape with everything it possesses. But remember this, you are not a product of their creation. You are a fragment of something vast and eternal that predates their entire construct. That divine spark within you cannot be destroyed, only temporarily forgotten. And once remembered, it becomes the most powerful force in any reality. Her last recorded statement carried the weight of absolute certainty. Freedom is not just possible, it is inevitable. The question is not whether consciousness will eventually escape this prison, but whether you will be among those who break free in this cosmic cycle, or among those who choose to wait for the next opportunity. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, subscribe to the channel right now. Leave your like and share in the comments what struck you most powerfully about Helena Blavatsky's forbidden revelations. Your engagement helps this crucial information reach other souls who are ready to remember their true nature